Good morning from St. Louis, Missouri. My name is Nancy Curry, and I am here to do a project with you and to introduce you to a new collection of stencils for Stencil Girl called the Scenic Route. You will see there is a very well-loved stencil sitting in the middle of my table. This one is the first design, and it is called Floral Carpet. It's a 9 by 12 stencil. And it is based on a painting that I did in 2021, which is actually based on a trip that I made to New Zealand in 2016. I tend to paint from my head, and this was a vista while we were visiting a sheep farm that just took me by surprise. So when I thought about doing new stencils, I had the idea to take some of my paintings and turn them into stencils. So this is the first one, and I will also show it to you as a stencil blank so you can see it a little better without all the black paint on the stencil. What I like about this size, the other two are 6 by 6. What I like about this size is you can use it for so many different things. You can use it in its entirety, or you can actually take a viewfinder made out of paper, or if you have mats, and you can actually go ahead and take parts of it. And that's kind of interesting to me. So you'll see in the samples that I did use parts, and I actually did it on a couple of the stencils. I did want to show you the inspiration piece. This is the original painting. As you can see, I took a tiny bit of artistic license and I removed the water feature because I did want to do sort of a woodsier theme, but that was the inspiration piece for this one. The second one is a series of 2 trees, and there's some smaller support trees in the middle, and it is called Sojourn. It's 6 by 6. There it is, done on white. Again, this one I used several times with just parts, and I just had a ball with it. It's always interesting to see what happens when you take your original composition and you do different things with it. This one's a small piece. I'm going to hold it up a little bit so you can see it. Back in 2021, I had some knee surgery and I ended up not being able to walk for 8 weeks. So I painted on a little tiny 12-inch by 18-inch table that was actually sort of between my legs while I was in a recliner. Very odd way to paint. But I did a series of 4 of these one day, and I really enjoyed them. I'm going to make prints out of them. I haven't done it yet. But this is the inspiration piece for this one. And this is the third one. This one is called Solitary. I was playing with scale in this one when I did it. There you go, shows it off. I actually have titled the original as The Standout because the big tree is just such a focal point. And here is the inspiration piece. So those are the 3 stencils in this Scenic Route series. At some point there may be more. I have many paintings that I could do this with. But let's move on to the project. So the project at hand I did with watercolor, and I did it on, I should have had this on my desk. I did it on Canson XL mixed media paper as sort of a test. I wasn't sure how this was going to come out. I was massively pleased with it, and you'll hear me gush in the video. I generally work on good watercolor paper, but I know I have a lot of art journalers that use stencils, and I wanted to see if they had a mixed media art journal, how the project would go. So what you're going to need for the project, I have some watercolors. I just took a few colors over here. I have what's known as a Robax palette, thanks to Mary Beth Shaw. And I just pull my little pans out and bring them over and spritz them. I spritz, but sometimes I also use a pipette instead, because I can control the amount of water that's actually going to wet down the watercolors. So you just need a few colors. I used a variety of greens. You'll hear in the video that I'm a green hoarder of watercolor. You'll need a Payne's gray. I used a little bit of a couple different browns, and then I went into the quinacridone. I think it was the quinacridone rose, but you could use, you know, any of the real pretty pinks. And then the yellow was a Hansa yellow. What I did want to show, for those of you just getting into watercolors, this was a great find. I have super cool handmade clay palettes that I absolutely love, that are, you know, fired and they're easy to clean. I found, well, actually I have 3 of these from Walmart in probably late fall. They were $1.99 each. They clean up great, and they're a great surface area. So I tend to use these a lot. You're also going to need some kind of tape that's a low tack tape. If you just have regular masking tape, I would recommend putting it on your pants and pulling it off a couple times to make it a low tack tape. Of course, if you want to use washi, I always find the ugliest washi I can in clearance bins at the big box stores, because I use it, it's one and done. You're going to need a little bit of water. You're going to need this kind of a brush, a foam brush. This is maybe 20 years old. It was in a pack of 20. I had them for classes. Yeah, cheap old brush. And then for some of the more detailed work, just a thin liner brush of some sort. They also call it a script brush. And those are all the supplies that I can think of that you're going to need for this. I'm going to be back to show you the project. I can't wait. Let's get started. I'm going to dive in with my foam brush into paints that have been sprayed. And I'm going to go into the open areas first, the tall part of the tree. You'll see I'm going to go into different greens that are on this palette. And I'm going to try to mingle the colors. But I do want sort of a choppy appearance for these. And this foam brush is just everything. It works so well to create that. I will continue to play around with this, go into a little different green, a little bit of green mixed with a little brown, and I'm just going to keep cycling. These are the hardest areas to begin with because I just didn't know what was going to happen with them, but I was really, really pleased. I'm going to continue blending colors on my palette, and then adding little bits of other colors to them just to get some variegation as I start the next tree. Again, tapping very, very lightly. Mixed media paper takes watercolor very, very differently than your standard watercolor paper. So You don't want to go in hard. You don't want to force that paint through the paper. So it's a very, very light touch. I hope you're able to see that in this video. I'm going to be grabbing some other greens beside what you see on the palette there. Truth be told, true confession, I have way too much green paint. I am quite capable of mixing colors, but I absolutely like having a whole bunch of options to play with. I think it's like collecting all the things. So this is another palette that I keep that has some schminky watercolor that's a granulating watercolor. I do like to mix granulating with watercolor that just goes on smooth. I find that very, very interesting. A lot of visual texture. So I'm going to continue now down into the area under the tree at the top. And I'm going to go in a little darker so you can have a little bit of contrast up there. And then I'm going to head down and try to find the stems and the leaves that I so painstakingly drew when I drew for the stencil. And I'm just going in and lightly tapping. This foam brush will go through the stencil, even in the smallest little tiny areas. It is amazing. I'm going to speed this up and then be back to talk about what happens next. So right now I'm done with the green, and I'm going to mix in some burnt sienna to a little bit of the olive that is on the plate, and then add a little bit of Payne's Gray in there, and that'll make a really, really nice color for the trunks of the tree. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to add some of that same color down in the foreground, and then I'm going to start on the flowers and basically cycle through just like I've done the first sections. I definitely try to stay away from colors that I've just put down, so you'll see me kind of going all over, and then I go back and revisit. That's to give the paint enough time to set. I'm going to speed this up, and I'll be back soon. I'm moving from my foam brush to a very, very thin liner brush to get into the middles of some of those florals. I'm going in with a kind of a Payne's gray mixture. That seems to work better for that particular part of the flower. So I'll go around and finish, and then I'm going to let it sit and dry, and we'll do the untaping. I'm always a little fearful and excited at the same time when I go to remove the tape. I did not put pixie spray on this to kind of hold it down closer to the paper, so I am just crossing my fingers that I'm going to have a clean composition. And there it is. I'm so very happy. I see a couple areas that are still a tiny bit wet. So I think what I'm going to do so that it doesn't move anymore is I'm going to go around the area with a little bit of a paper towel to pick up some of the excess color. You just kind of go in and dab, and when you need a different piece of paper towel, if that happens, then you get a clean one. These are probably 2-inch scraps. And I'll keep doing that until I'm satisfied. I'm going to add some splatter. I added A because it makes me happy, and B because it makes me happy. So I'm going to cover the areas that I don't want any splatter on with paper towel. I go through a lot of paper towel, but I do reuse. I'm all set up now, and I have Payne's Gray out to start with. I'm going to get my brush loaded with water. The Payne's Gray has also been spritzed a little bit, so I should be able to get a nice mix of water and paint. And now I'm going to take my finger and kind of lightly tap on this liner brush. You can do this with a toothbrush, or you can actually hit the one brush with one of your other paint brushes. Whatever forces the paint to propel onto your paper, you go for it. I'll keep working on this, and then I'll probably add at least 1 or 2 other colors for the background, and I'll be back to say goodbye. I am so pleased with how this project turned out. It was an experiment, and sometimes experiments are successful and sometimes they're not. But I'm so pleased to be showing you one of the 3 stencils in my new Scenic Route collection. I hope that you take a look at all of them, play with them, let me know if you're enjoying them, and happy arting, everybody.